Hello, scholars. My name is Dr. Rachel Dunbar. I'm an associate professor of education in the College of Education at the University of West Alabama. This recording, as with others, is to provide you an overview of one of your key assessments. The key assessment for this particular recording is Key Assessment 4, which is Early Learning Center. You will have to create a project based upon standards that have been issued by NAEYC, the National Association for the Education of Young Children. I am going to now share my screen with you, give you an overview of the project, provide the instructions for you, and share the rubric. Keep in mind, as with any of your other key assessments, that this is just to let you know in a broad sense what it is that you are to do for this project, but you have many opportunities to talk with your instructor, and that instructor will provide you additional details so that you can be successful in your project. Key assessment number 4, the Early Learning Center. This particular assessment has these particular standards for NAEYC. As always, the standards are numbers and the key competencies are indicated by the letters. You will see these at the beginning of your assignment description, and then when you scroll down, you will see the same key competencies embedded in the instructions and in the rubric. So let's do an overview of this assignment. You are going to create a learning center that is going to be ideal, one that you have come up with, that if you said, if I was going to be in charge of a school, or if I was going to develop a learning center where I know I would want to send my children, what would it be? You are going to have an equitable learning center where the learning can take place for children in a certain age group, and they're going to get the best instruction and development possible. You have to think about how students' lives are shaped at the very beginning of their educational career. Always, and I say career like they are big kids, but they are going to be going into a journey of learning and growing. The opportunities that are placed in the lives of these children at an early stage then shapes what they're able to think about later. So you are going to be able to design your own learning center and create a presentation so that you can share with others what you feel is ideal. So here are the project expectations. There are planning pages that have been created for you. You're not going to have to make up your own pages because everything that you need to jot down notes, brainstorm ideas, and put this project together or have been provided for you. You have to incorporate NAEYC standards. Now, this is a key point. There are key competencies here. These are the things that you will be evaluated on, but you are not incorporating these specific ones into your early learning center. You'll see as we scroll down in just a moment that you're going to choose the ones that you want to incorporate. Remember, these are the ones that you're being evaluated on, and there are others that you're going to put into your learning center. You want to make sure that you engage community stakeholders. A stakeholder, when it comes to a school system, is going to be anyone who has a vested interest in the children there. It can be parents and caregivers and guardians. It can be teachers, administrators. It can be people who are in the surrounding area who have businesses. It can be community leaders like the United Way. You want to find a way to engage them into your learning center. You want to put together a slideshow that is going to be exciting to view. It's going to be visually engaging and very well organized. Then you're going to have to present this to your peers. So you're going to be evaluated not only on what you pull together, but how you present it. So let's start with choosing a name for your early learning center. You're not going to just call it the Livingston Early Learning Center, although that might be a good name. There needs to have some type of meaning behind it. So think about the values and the philosophy that you want to instill in the young children who will matriculate through your early learning center. You will think about the vision and the mission that your early learning center has, and then that's how you're going to help pull together a name. Think about the core values, a love for learning that you want to have for your children. You could also honor someone or have a legacy. So think about it in this way. Let's say that you had a family member who you looked up to as a child and they passed away. You may want to name your learning center after that person. And so then their legacy will live on in the education of young children, or it could be a historical figure. If you're going to do that, then you need to explain who that person is and give an explanation of why you chose to name the center after that person. And make sure that it has relevance and a purpose. Here are a couple of examples. Bright Futures Academy. So there is hope in there. There is the opportunity for children to learn and grow, and then every child can succeed. Another one might be the Fred Rogers Early Learning Center. And this will pay tribute to Fred Rogers, uh, like from Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. I don't, oh goodness, if you're doing this, you may not know Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, but after you watch this explanation, be sure to go look up Mr. Rogers. So you could have a learning center that's dedicated to him. Then what you're going to do is make sure that when you pull the name together, you give a description of it and let us know how it aligns with the vision for your school. This is going to distinctly give your learning center its own unique identity so that if someone says, "Oh, I'm thinking about where would I want to send my child as a preschool student," I know I want to send my baby to Fred Rogers Academy because of this particular reason. Then, along with this, you have to develop a mission statement and a vision statement. Now, they are, excuse me, not the same thing, although they seem somewhat similar. And then what you're going to have to do is distinguish between the two to make sure that you have two different statements. All right. I think I stopped sharing for just a moment. Let me continue with that. So here are examples of a mission statement and a vision statement. I'm not going to read the whole thing because I know that you can actually read it yourself, but pay attention to the wording. And it's about a full paragraph. You don't want it to be so long that uh, the parents who would come to the school would think, oh, this is a lot for me to consider. But you do want to have enough information there that will pull out the importance of relationships, nurturing interactions, look to see what's in bold, family partnerships, a secure, inclusive learning environment. Pay attention that this is one of the first key competencies that is showing up. That is NAEYC 4A. I'm going to scroll back up to the top so you can see what 4A actually says. That is, understand and demonstrate positive, caring, supportive relationships and interactions as the foundation of early childhood educators' work with young children. So we've got that key competency. You got the chart here. It shows up in your mission and vision statement. And then you're going to see later when we scroll down to the rubric that you will be evaluated on that very thing. Always remember that in these key assessments, you will have your key competencies. They will show up in the instructions. They will show up again in the rubric because you are going to be evaluated on what you've been assigned to do. After you create your mission and your vision statement, you want to make sure that you are making key connections. There has to be security for the children in terms of making sure that when their guardians drop them off, it is a place where they can feel safe and loved. And then you also want to make sure that the future for these children are very bright when they attend your center. Going on to the next thing, which is developmentally appropriate practice. This is key because children should reach certain milestones when they are at a particular age. NACE has a statement about developmentally appropriate practice, and that is something that you will see later on when we scroll down. You need to review that. You need to make sure that you know it and understand it and are able to embrace it. Allow for critical reflection because what you will want to do is select 5 of those 10 developmentally appropriate practices and integrate them into your early learning center. You and your peers do not have to have the exact same ones. You will choose the 5 that resonate most with you, what really stands out for you to have take place at your learning center. You're going to have to explain why you chose those particular practice or those particular principles and how you will implement them at your learning center. You will have to have assessments, both formal and informal, to be able to track the progress that the babies are making at your school. You will have critical reflection. So where we have guidelines for completion, you're going to make sure that you have thoughtfully reflected on the principles. You're going to provide real world examples of how these can be applied at the Learning Center and even when the children leave there. And then how you will implement assessments. Now, you're going to need additional support on this. So after you've watched the video, make sure that you have a really in-depth discussion with your instructor on some examples of what you can do for formal and informal assessments. Your instructor will go into more detail about that. Here you will, this is giving you more information that you'll explain the principle and how it can be applied at the Learning Center. You'll explain the assessment methods as well. All right. You're also going to have to select a curriculum model and describe it. There are a number of different curriculum models that are in place. You will be learning about that while you're in this course, what the different models are. You can do some additional research on your own. But you want to think about, based upon the curriculum models that you've learned in this course and the different theorists who are behind those curriculum models, which one best aligns with the mission and vision that you have for your school? And that is going to help build the framework for your early learning center. Select the best fit. And then, as always, you're going to have to give an explanation. Tell your instructor why you chose that particular curriculum model and the philosophy that goes behind the theorists that developed it. Now, you're going to have to give a really great explanation and description of your early learning center curriculum. You want it to be comprehensive. It needs to develop and nurture the whole child. And this goes into their mental, their physical, their social, emotional, and their academic growth. How are you addressing all of that in the curriculum that you've established at your early learning center? This is going to cover key competency 2B, and you'll be able to look back at that information when you print a hard copy of this particular key assessment. You're going to use the community involvement section of your assignment. And again, I'm going in order of the things that you have to do, but the supplemental materials that you have, you're going to see those in a moment. So there will be a section where you are going to gather data about community involvement, and you will use that to help develop your curriculum. Because you think about, what do I have in the area? What are going to be some resources that I will be able to use to pour into my early learning center to help my students become really productive citizens and strong learners? In your curriculum, you are going to have to tell how you have partnerships with families. The families need to feel that that they have the ability to be actively engaged. And then give examples of classroom activities, routines, and teaching strategies that go along with the model that you have selected. I said before that children reach benchmarks and milestones at certain ages. And based upon the age group that you're going to allow to be at your school, you need to know what are some of the major milestones that they should be able to achieve while they're at your learning center. You need to outline all of that. They have to be active at these particular stages and be able to achieve them by the time they reach the next age. So again, we look at their social emotional skills, their cognitive skills, their physical development as well. You want to have what's called a reciprocal relationship with family members. So it's not that you're always pouring into families. You want to do that, but you want them to contribute to the school as well. That can be in their time and their talents. It can be something that comes from their job, or it could even be with them volunteering. Think about how you can have that reciprocal relationship with families and to engage them. Talk about how you will work alongside families and even what the communication methods will be. Look carefully at that. Then, for your learning opportunities expectations, think about, how does all of this align? You've got your curriculum description, clear examples of how things at your school are going to be collaborative and engaging, and it also has to be developmentally appropriate. Here we go into some of the charts. You think about, what will be the population of children that you will serve at your early learning center? That goes into the demographics. All of the different life experiences that children may have feed into what their abilities are and even how resilient they are able to be. But environment plays a large role as well. So, and you'll see in one of your other early learnings, or one of your other key assessments, that you have to talk about the location. And you think about, is it an urban, a suburban, or a rural area? Where do you want your early learning center to be located? Think about the demographics of the community that you're deciding to place your early learning center in. And you want to make sure that you have resources for the diverse populations that will come into your center. Here's a key point that I'm going to highlight. Diversity is not just about race and gender. We always come up with that. But there are so many things that make a child unique: their cultural background, their traditions, their abilities and disabilities, their ability to speak, their language differences. You're going to have students who have different emotional levels. Like, for instance, if you have children who may be autistic at your school, that is a form of diversity. You have to think about what you are going to have as part of the demographics in your school. Now, this chart is expandable, right? So even though it looks like you don't have much space, you actually have plenty of space to type. So you would tell where it is located, the age group that you're going to serve, what are you going to focus on for your developmental areas and instructional strategies. So as you come up with that, feel free to use this to type in. The chart will expand, and this is part of what you will share in your presentation. Here is an example of culturally relevant practices during your instruction. You want to have a commitment to equity, family engagement, and differentiated instruction. So an example might be that you are going to have neurodiverse learners. Well, if you have neurodiverse learners in your school, that's wonderful. I'm saying school and early learning center interchangeably, so don't get confused by that. It is an early learning center, but it can also be considered a school. So you would put down examples of, if I have a student who is neurodivergent, I might want to have a visual schedule for that child. There might need to be places around the room where I have sensory toys or manipulatives that will speak to where their sensory needs. Routines are going to be important. When you have a child who is neurodivergent and there is a routine in place and they're on track, they don't want anything to potentially confuse them. Let's look at the community involvement. We want to strengthen partnerships for our early learning center because we want to have, again, just the same way that we have reciprocity with parents, we want to have reciprocity with our stakeholders. You are going to find a way to engage families and communities. By doing this, you're going to reach out to at least 5 parents or caregivers or community members. Find out from them, what do they think should go into an early learning center? Get feedback from them. Discover if they wanted their children to go to your early learning center, what do they want to see present? When you get that feedback from them, you're going to be able to integrate that into the policy that you have for your center and how you're going to engage stakeholders in the community and come up with a plan. Think about how you can actively engage them throughout the school year so that they feel like they're involved and that their opinion matters, because you're going to constantly have them as part of the growth and development of the students who go to your learning center. This chart is available for you as well, so you don't have to make one. Remember, you can type in here and it will expand, right? You're going to, here's an example for parents and guardians. The feedback that they may have given you is, for this early learning center, I want to make sure that there's going to be ongoing communication so that I will know what's happening with my child. And I want you to tell me whenever there's going to be a family-friendly event. So then what you say is, the way that I can incorporate this into my early learning center is that I will have regular parent-teacher conferences. The early learning center will have newsletters, and there's going to be family nights. This is just an example. You're going to put in your own. Here are the expectations that you're going to have to gather feedback from stakeholders, integrate their suggestions, have a structured plan of how you're going to integrate this, and make sure that you use the chart to organize your thoughts. Right. The other chart that you will have is going to talk about the inclusive practices that you will have at the center. So when you think about developmentally appropriate practices, they're going to include everything from the child's background, what their interests are, the things that they enjoy doing. And an anti-bias education will integrate, as it says here, materials that are multicultural, that provide diverse perspectives, and then that also provide equity. You're going to look at UDL, which is the Universal Design for Learning, so that every child who attends your early learning center will have the opportunity to participate in learning experiences. So for instance, one of your resource types when you think about the universal learning support might be the public library. What is an example of a service that can be provided? It may be story time where the books are read in more than one language. And how does this actually support learning? Well, it promotes literacy for children who are dual language learners, and the family can be involved. This chart expands as well. All right. Here is where I said that there are examples of developmentally appropriate practices. You want to be able to do things such as acknowledge your children, ask questions, provide them with assistance, give information, and even model and demonstrate for them. Here are several theorists and curriculum models that you can consider. You would have heard of a lot of these theorists before, so their names are going to be familiar to you. And what you do is you just pull one of the theorists and whatever their curriculum model is, and use that to undergird what you're going to develop for your learning center. All right, so here's the planning sheet. You don't have to develop it on your own. I would recommend that you print a copy of this. You can jot down things in pencil. You can write in ink, because I believe that you're going to change your mind a few times as you continue through the course and your instructor gives you such valuable information. You may think that you had one idea in mind, but then you may change it, right? So you need to be able to jot this down. And then when it's time to submit it, you'll actually go back in and type in your notes. So you're going to include the name of the school, the guide that you have decided, the curriculum model that you have decided to use. Work on your mission and vision statements. Describe the curriculum, where it's located. All of these things are components that I spoke about earlier in the instructions. This is just your planning sheet, so you can brainstorm and put down your ideas. All right, and then here we are with the rubric. As I showed you earlier, the instructions have a key competency associated with them. Wherever you see a key competency in the instructions, it means, yes, I will eventually be graded on this when it comes to the rubric. One of the things was the demographics of the students that you're going to serve. You want to go from, we'll evaluate you on needs improvement, moving towards target, and actually meeting target. When you look at the demographics of the students, you want to make a statement that is going to clearly describe the students. What are their demographics, their diversity, and talk about how these impact learning for your children. You're going to select your curriculum model, the community involvement, developmentally appropriate practices, your mission and vision statement, and then culturally responsive, developmentally appropriate learning environment. Now, if you pay close attention, the majority of your standards or your key competencies are all on the first part of this rubric. So you have to pay really, really close attention to making sure that in the instructions, all of the things that you're supposed to give as a description, that you include them in the overview of your early learning center. That's why that planning page is so important. When we get down to the second part of the rubric, it is not going to cover the key competencies, but instead it is going to be your presentation. What have you included about your early learning center? How is it going to look? Where is it going to be located? How can you make sure Oh, think about it like this. You know, when you see commercials on television and they're trying to entice you to purchase something or maybe convince you to go on vacation. Essentially, what you're doing in this presentation is convincing parents that they need to bring their children to your early learning center. So make sure that you are covering all of this. It has to be visually appealing. It has to be professional because you're trying to convince someone, hey, this is the best spot for your child to attend. Be consistent and coherent. Okay. Again, your instructor will go over this with you in more detail so you can pick out the really small things and think about the research that you're going to have to do. So that takes us to the end of the Early Learning Center. You've got to have fun with this one because this is your thing. You're coming up with it. Ideally, it is where you would send your children if you had to choose a place for them to learn and grow. Remember that this video is just an overview of the key assessment that you have to complete. So you use this video, compare what you have in your written or the hard copy of the instructions, use it juxtaposed to what you've learned in this video, and then be prepared to ask your instructor some very detailed questions to make sure that you do exactly what is expected of you. Now, is it supposed to be perfect? No. But is it supposed to be ideal where it can be an exciting place for children to learn? Yes. So put a lot of work and effort into this because who knows? An opportunity may come up at some time for you to develop your own early learning center in real life. Thank you.